Hello, this is Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. Today's video is a third lesson in my series of videos in which I am going through answer writing for course studies. So if you haven't already, do watch the Dement and Kleitman and Hassett et al. Videos which are available in my channel. Following the format that I have used in those videos, today we'll discuss some answers from Holzel et al. Okay, first we'll go through some descriptive answers. One question they could ask us from this study is name the sampling technique used in the study. Any study they ask us about the sampling technique just for 1 mark, and the command term is name. We literally just have to name. We are not to explain why we are saying that is the sampling method or what is a strength or weakness, simply naming it. So you can see here, opportunity sampling is the correct answer. For your knowledge, you must be knowing that opportunity sampling we say because they took participants who were already enrolled into the MBSR program. So when researchers select a sample that's easily available, like they wanted to see the effects of MBSR and these are the very people who are enrolled into it, it is most convenient for the researchers. That is why we say it is opportunity. Okay, next they could ask us for one finding of the study. In Holzel et al., it is very important to memorize the parts of the brain which showed grey matter increase. Like this is a question that comes a lot from students. Do we have to know the names of each and every part? Of course, because it's a biological study and that was the main thing they were looking out for. That was their dependent variable. So you have to be able to name those areas which showed an increase and those which did not. If you say something vague like there was increase in grey matter in certain areas of the brain, you're not going to be scoring well. So one finding was that there was increase in left hippocampus, posterior cingulate cortex, temporoparietal junction and cerebellum in the MBSR group compared with the control group. Okay, and make sure to name all the areas when you're writing about it to score full 2 marks. Okay, another descriptive question EO1 type which can come from this study is explain 2 aims of this study. One aim, which is the most obvious one, is again to look for grey matter increase in the brain. So that was there, and like I just mentioned in the previous answer, you do need to write which areas they were looking out for an increase in. Now all the areas in which they found an increase, they were not looking out for all of them before they began the study. There were certain specific areas they were looking out for based on the results of past studies. Those were the hippocampus and the insula of the brain. So you need to mention that when it comes to the aim. Don't write the findings related brain areas in the aim. That they happened to find. They were not specially looking out for it. So it was not their purpose. Another aim we could give is whether any other regions there was an increase. Here also what you have to take note of is we have not named those areas. So we have not named areas like the cingulate cortex or the temporoparietal junction. That is because they were not looking out for those in particular. They just wanted to see besides the hippocampus and insula was the increase in any area. So you are not to name those in the aims of the study. Okay, now coming to little AO2 and AO3 type of question. So first there's an AO3 type of evaluative question. Give one example of how lack of standardization was a weakness in this study. As such, the procedure seems highly standardized in the Holzel et al. Study because the group meetings are fixed and the duration of the program is fixed. The time points at which scanning of the brain and answering of the FFMQ have been done, everything seems to be very, very regulated. So undoubtedly there's a lot of standardization in this study, but if we look at it closely, one very key aspect they were not able to standardize, which was how participants are practicing the mindfulness exercises in their homes. So as you know, there were 3 mindfulness exercises: body scan, sitting meditation and yoga. Now whether participants were doing it as instructed, as they were taught, and how long they were doing these exercises. That is something researchers did not look into because they did not have like CCTV cameras in the participants' homes through which they were looking at it. They did ask them later to give them the duration for which they had done it. Still, of course, they found also that the durations were not equal, and how they did it exactly is something they did not look into. So that is where standardization is lacking. In any study, if they ask you why standardization is lacking, just as for standardization, you would think what is same across participants. Here you would think what could be different between different participants. So this is that aspect of the study which was different. Now, very important in the question, the word weakness has been used, and they want this example how it shows a weakness. So you can't just leave it at this was what was not standardized. Then that becomes a descriptive answer. How it was a weakness is very important. So it is a weakness because participants could have practiced these exercises differently, and that would have reduced the reliability of the findings. Very important to link it to the weakness and not just leave it at what was different. Okay, next they've asked for any two methodological weaknesses of the study. I have mentioned this in the last video also, I think, about the Hassett et al. Study. I'll just repeat it very briefly and quickly. Methodological strengths and weaknesses and ethical strengths and weaknesses are different areas. So in methodological weaknesses, if you write ethical weaknesses, any of those 8 ethical guidelines being violated, you will not be credited any marks. So you have to make sure literally your weaknesses in method come from the method section of the study. So anywhere from the variables, procedure, controls, even controls as such come under variables, sample, data analysis, any area from the method or procedure of the study. That's the design or the procedure. So one methodological weakness in this study is the use of self-report data to find out whether participants were improving in areas of mindfulness such as being non-judgmental, observant. They made them answer a questionnaire, which is the FFMQ, 5 Facets of Mindfulness questionnaire. Now the problem with self-report as such, there are multiple problems that we could address. For now I have taken social desirability. Other possible issues you could take is response bias, them just answering the questions mindlessly, that's one thing. Or you could take not being remembering at the point of answering exactly how much improvement is there, not being able to estimate correctly, or not being able to express properly. Those issues also there. Right now I've taken social desirability. It's simple. Because participants were practicing MBSR, they might have wanted to impress the researcher by indicating that they are getting the benefit of the program and they are improving, the program is beneficial or effective, even if it was not. That would reduce the validity of findings. And again, one more thing I like to point out here, weakness, and that is why reducing validity is important to mention. Again, we must not just name some issue and leave it at that. Always be complete in your point. So what strength or weakness is there? Always finish with that. Another weakness we could give is the use of a passive control group. The control group in this study is just a waitlist control group. They're just waiting for their turn to come to practice mindfulness. During the study, they don't do anything. They just come and give the scans, MRI scans at the beginning and after the period. I forgot the exact period. So they give the scans, but they don't do any exercises. Ideally, what should happen is we should have a kind of placebo control group. In the sense, if one group is doing MBSR, the other group should also do some simple stress relief or relaxation exercises, so that we can know that just doing any exercise can create an expectancy effect. Of course, that will not improve brain areas, but just doing any exercise would help a person feel better. Like on the FFMQ, firstly it would reflect that they are feeling that they have become more observant or more non-judgmental, not specifically or particularly MBSR. And then because of that, because of expectations and feeling that one is better because of like a positive outlook which is developing. Is that a reason for some gray matter change in certain areas of the brain, especially areas which are related to emotion or empathy, because the person is just feeling good? Could that be a reason for increase in gray matter? That is something they could have looked into had the control group been active rather than passive. Okay, so these were some evaluative questions. I'm definitely not going through the whole worksheet. I'm going through selected answers just to see a variety of different types. So again, there is a descriptive question. Name one brain area that showed gray matter increase as hypothesized by researchers and one area which did not. The area that did show increase was hippocampus. Here they've just asked name, so we just have to write that. And the one which did not show was insula. So as simple as that. Okay, I'm more interested in discussing the next question. Two friends, Ken and Tom, are discussing the study by Holzel et al. In terms of nature versus nurture. Ken believes the study supports nature, but Tom believes the study supports nurture. Give one reason why you think Ken is correct and one reason why you think Tom is correct. Students get very worried about these nature-nurture type of questions. Any debate type of questions where they have to side with either, they get very fixated on one side and they are not able to see the other. See, simply what you have to do is, for these type of questions, I always say, you first note which behavior has been investigated in the study. In this case, it is increase in gray matter. I know strictly speaking it's not a behavior, so you can think of it as the dependent variable. Next, you have to think why. What is the explanation of increase in gray matter? In this study, if you see, there are two explanations. Definitely the primary one is practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness practice has resulted in increase in gray matter. Another reason is the brain by itself has the capability or what we call plasticity to adapt. Otherwise, it is not possible that someone is practicing some program and the brain is changing. If the brain was rigid or static, it would have not changed. So this supports nurture because the person is learning mindfulness, and this one supports nature because the person's brain is plastic inherently, or genetically the human brain is designed to be such. It's as simple as that. So if you just trace back behavior to explanation and then you see where the explanation is coming from, you can understand whether nature is being supported or nurture. Now when we answer these type of questions, here they have given like a stem and we just have to complete, even if they would have not. I insist that students name whom they are referring to in every point. Like students will write very disconnectedly without referring to the scenario at all. Nature is right because this nurture. When they have given you wording like Ken and Tom and all, why not say Ken is correct because this? That is a better way of writing. Always engage with the wording of the question like this. Like always use it. Always proactively take it into your answer. So one reason Ken is correct is because, like I just explained, there is underlying plasticity of the brain which is affected, which is reflected in gray matter increase after any type of practice. And one reason why Tom is correct is because the participants did undergo 8 weeks of MBSR, and because of their practice of MBSR program, there was a change in gray matter. If it was only a matter of plasticity, then it's not that automatically the brain is growing. The person is having to engage in some practice, then only it's happening. So nurture side will always be about some type of learning. Okay, next is explain the experimental design used in this study. Explain the experimental design. These type of questions, the biggest mistake students make is to get into evaluation, strengths and weaknesses. Explain the experimental design just means that you point out firstly what the design is and then you elaborate on why you are saying that this is the design. Justification, that's all. No strength, no weakness. So independent measures design was there. Why am I saying that? Because there is a separate group of participants that practices MBSR and a totally different group which serves as the control group in this study. Nothing more than that. See, the definition of independent groups design is that there are two separate groups. You just have to think of the definition and point out how it applies to this particular study. That's all. Next is give one reason why a control group was used in this study. Same thing, you just have to justify. Why do we use control groups in general? To serve as a baseline for comparison. So just apply that to this study, and as always, don't give a generic answer. Make sure you're contextualizing it in the study. Control group was that group which underwent MRI scanning and FFMQ. Why am I writing these things? Because I'm going to point it out in the justification. So why they answered the FFMQ and why they underwent MRI scanning? Because any change in grey matter and any improvement in mindfulness could be seen that is it because of MBSR program alone, or anyways with passage of time that type of improvement takes place. So just because of time has passed, so these areas tend to grow naturally, or it is only because of practice of MBSR program, that could be compared across the groups, and then we could say yes, it is because of MBSR if the control group was not showing exactly the same changes as the MBSR group. Next question is, Abigail has noticed that Buddhist monks spend a great deal of time meditating each day. She believes that longer a person has been a monk and higher the hippocampal grey matter concentration. State the type of hypothesis Abigail might write if she wanted to investigate the relationship further, and give one reason for your choice. Hypothesis is a part of research methods. Now in the AS level, they are less likely to ask in the paper. And especially for your designer study, they have not insisted on having hypothesis. Which reminds me that if you want to see how to design a study, do check my last video. But in your A levels, at least it's going to help a lot. So no harm practicing it even now, and it can come in the paper. It's not like it won't come at all. It's just less likely. Okay, so when they are saying state the type of hypothesis, it just means null, directional or non-directional. Now, how we decide on the type of hypothesis? If you've learned your research methods chapter well, you would know if it is explicitly mentioned in some research study, like there's a finding or a conclusion which gives us a definitive direction that this is what it is, in the sense this is the impact of the independent variable on the dependent variable. So any study which has a significant finding, we can use that as a justification for why we are proposing something. So to make it less ambiguous, in this study, Holzel et al., what we have seen is definitive result is there that practicing of mindfulness does result in increase in hippocampus and 3 other areas of the brain. So we have definitive research conclusion to base a directional hypothesis on. Supposing the research finding was insignificant, or there were contradictions in research, like one study was telling us mindfulness does increase grey matter and the other one was telling us no. In that case, we would have proposed a non-directional hypothesis, but right now giving a directional one is good. Now, one more very important consideration here is not to mix up an experimental and a correlational hypothesis. It's clearly specified she wants to investigate a relation. In fact, if you read the stem of the question, the wording is absolutely correlational. The longer a person has been a monk, the higher their hippocampal grey matter. Typical positive correlation type of statement it is. You lose marks in this case if you give a different space. That is an experimental hypothesis. So how some students would mistakenly put it is, as compared to monks who do not practice much each day, monks who do practice show increase in grey matter concentration. They have not asked you for a comparison or difference. You're not to compare two groups. So your standard correlational hypothesis which you've learned how to place, you have to answer in that way. There is a significant positive correlation. Why positive word I have used? Directional. This is what the study is showing. So I have a reason to say it's going to be positive. Significant word is important because we always talk about the population, not only the sample. So there is a significant positive correlation between. Now we have to name the variables. Standard format of writing correlational hypothesis. So one is duration of being a monk, that is one variable, because they've said longer a person has been a monk. So that translates to duration of being a monk. and hippocampal gray matter concentration. This is the second variable, so we have to write this. Now they have also mentioned give one reason for your choice. Some students, firstly, they find the wording is long of the question. It is a little long question. Secondly, they think so much how to write the hypothesis because they've not practiced enough, that they end up just writing the hypothesis and they forget that they have to give one reason for choice. See, it might seem very trivial what I'm saying right now, but it is not. Because of silly reasons like these, you end up losing marks. Like 1 mark is totally gone if you don't give a reason. Okay, so don't stress out in the paper, don't go unpracticed in the paper such that when you're writing the answer you forget half of the question. So after giving this hypothesis, we have to give a reason. So reason is because in the Holzel et al. Study it has been shown definitively that 8-week practice of mindfulness does increase volume of the hippocampus. Again, your reason can't be because this is what is shown in the Holzel et al. Study. You always have to contextualize every answer. This is shown means what is shown. Always be very clear. Okay, so exactly which finding it is which has resulted in directional hypothesis, I have pointed out to that. Okay, so this is one more answer. Let's move ahead. Okay, the next set of questions is again more or less evaluative. Suggest one way in which quantitative data was collected. This is a descriptive one. Quantitative data has been collected in 2 ways. One is increase in gray matter. They have used the VBM technique. VBM technique shows the proportion or percentage increase in gray matter. So that is quantitative because it's like percentage or proportion. But students generally find it little difficult to elaborate on that. So I've taken the easier one. FFMQ is a quantitative data collector. And always when we are saying, we have to justify because after all they have allotted 2 marks and they've asked for a way. They've not just asked name one questionnaire or name one quantitative tool. So the way of collecting or the justification why we are saying it's quantitative, because participants just have to allot ratings. Now I can't just say allot ratings, I have to be specific and say what type of ratings they have to allot on FFMQ. So they have to rate from 1 meaning never or rarely true to 5 meaning very often always true. This is how we justify. Okay, next question is outline 2 ways in which findings of the study could be applied to everyday life. So again, issues and debates. Most students on this question, they will answer very briefly and they end up getting 1 or 2 marks, although it's very easy to score. Why they end up getting 1 or 2 marks? Because they will just say it's useful for students, it's useful for employees. How is not specified at all. Or they'll give a very general answer. Students can do mindfulness. Nowadays there's a lot of stress. Employees can do mindfulness. Nowadays there's a lot of stress. Again, no detailing. What stress is there for which mindfulness can be helpful? Or to what effect it will be helpful? What will be the result of doing mindfulness? Nothing. So it doesn't show good understanding, it doesn't show clear thinking, so marks will not be achieved. Here I have given the findings. One more thing is many times students point out that lengthy answers can get marks. I just like to give you some tips in between, so I'm just discussing this. Might seem little out of track, but I just want to discuss this. Students feel writing lengthy answers will get marks. Why? Because they just don't understand the content. They just look at the answer. It looks long. It looks like a lot of words have been used. So very superficially they come to the conclusion, oh, lot of words is what will get marks. Lot of words will not get marks. Good content will get marks. So when you see an answer is long, read through that answer. See why it is long. Because obviously if I'm going to cover content, it will take me some words. Right? The more you explain something better, won't it require you to take more words? You're not to look at an answer superficially and think, oh, words will get marks. Is it that any words will get marks? Many students get disappointed because they write very long answers and they don't get marks. They even fail. Because you have not looked at the answer carefully. Students who scored well have not got it for the length of the answer. It's because they have covered a lot of content in that length. That is why. Okay, so this answer also, don't just look at it and think it's long, because it includes the effects of doing mindfulness and because it explains how it is helpful. That is why it is long. That is why that need has been there to use so many words. Okay, so using words without any need, just for the sake of elaborating, just for elongating, is not going to get you marks. Coming back to the answer, definitely children or students can be enrolled into the MBSR program. That is a correct application. It's just that we don't leave it at that. We further elaborate why they should enroll in the MBSR program. Like any answer you're writing, generally you can ask yourself why. So they should enroll because hippocampus increases, like we saw from the Holzel study. Now, how will hippocampus increase help children or students? Because they have to do a lot of academics. Academics is the priority in their life. So they have to study a lot. They have to answer exams. Hippocampus is that area of the brain which helps in formation of memories, encoding. So you must have learned in the background and the psychology being investigated. This is how you learn from different sections and you combine all the knowledge that you've gained to write a good answer. Okay, so making use of what you learned in psychology being investigated and the findings, if you've really understood the study, collectively you're able to write a good answer. That shows your good understanding of the study. That's what they mean by good understanding in their marking criteria. So because hippocampus helps in formation of memories, and that's what students need in their academic life a lot, that is why mindfulness based practice can be very useful to them. So this is how you have to explain concretely. Another way is employees in high stress jobs. Again, a very valid point to say employees can make use of MBSR. But why? Because they have high stress jobs, and if they do MBSR, as we have learned on the FFMQ, they will become more observant, they'll become more non-judgmental, and they'll be able to act with awareness, because the MBSR group showed improvement in exactly these 3 areas. So we expect that these employees also will show improvement in these areas. And because of that, what? Again, we have to be complete. So why should they become more aware and more observant and all? Because it will improve their productivity and satisfaction, or it will make them more relaxed. Something like that you could write. Okay, so application answers are easy to score provided you discuss at length and what you say should make sense. Next question is, explain how the researchers operationalized one dependent variable in the study. The marks I think got cut out of this. This is 2 marks. Okay. When it comes to operationalization, though not compulsory, how I prefer to go about it is first just name the dependent variable. So gray matter concentration is the dependent variable. This is a typical paper 4 questions. You can begin this way. And then operationalize, as I always say, exactly how they have measured in the study. So how did they come to know whether there's any increase in gray matter concentration? By using VBM analysis, voxel based morphometry analysis of regions of interest, that is ROIs, of hippocampus, insula and other regions of the brain. Again, I have not used terms like percentage or proportion because that's not specifically given in most of the textbooks. So to be safe, I've just named the technique and pointed out which are the regions which they were looking out for. Again, aim based, not finding based, because initially they were not looking for TPJ and other areas, they just happened to find them. So they were looking for hippocampus, insula and other areas when they prepared the plan. So that's how I've written. VBM writing is very important. So students will tell me, what if we don't remember VBM or we don't remember the full form and all? Then don't write about gray matter increase. They've asked you one dependent variable. So you can talk about the FFMQ again, more or less similar to what we wrote in quantitative data. Take up that one if you find this one difficult. But one thing I'll tell you, in the paper they can be specific as to which dependent variable they want. Like always they won't give you an option any one dependent variable. They could tell you related to the brain or change in gray matter concentration, how was it operationalized. So because they can be very specific, you have to know, you have to learn how to operationalize the brain related dependent variable also. You can't leave it all together. It's just that if they are giving you a choice, like do one, then it's up to you. You can make use of that choice and write the one which you're more comfortable writing. That's all. Okay, in operationalization, other tips I can give is be very specific. Be very specific to measurement, and again, do not confuse it with strengths and weaknesses. The last question I'm going to discuss today is explain one reason why longitudinal study design was necessary in this study. See, generally, why do we do longitudinal? This is quite a simple question. Longitudinal studies are done when something can be observed only after a period of time. Like something is a long or gradual process. So immediately in one session, we can't manipulate something and study the effects. So that is the case here. Means you just have to contextualize it to Holzel et al. Longitudinal design was necessary because MBSR has to be practiced for a long duration, like 8 weeks. Then only any gray matter increase will be there. It won't be seen in the short term, like within few minutes or hours, people's brain is not going to increase by doing a little mindfulness. So that is the justification or reason for doing longitudinal study. Okay, so that's as simple as that. Again, for the last one, the only tip I can give is be specific as always. Mention exactly what is taking time, MBSR program, and exactly how much time it's taking, 8 weeks. Nothing else. Okay, so that's it for this video, and I've tried to cover again various questions AO1, AO2, AO3. If you have any doubts about anything I've discussed in this video, you can drop it in the comment section below. I'll come up soon with another video. Till then, goodbye.